Welcome, everybody, to Divots Skins, episode 5. And I'm here with my buddy Brett, and we're going to tell you about some things we've seen in the news as to what's going on with golf. And a big one this past weekend is Nelly won another major, the U.S. Open. And what that gives her is an opportunity to go for a career Grand Slam. So why don't you explain what is the difference between a Grand Slam and a career Grand Slam?
Career Grand Slam is just any time from the start of your LPGA, in her case, the LPGA Tour career, from that point until the time she retires. If she collects all 4 of the Grand Slam tournaments, if she wins them all at one point or another in her career, she'd have the career Grand Slam. The old-fashioned Grand Slam, what they would talk about is if you won all 4 in the same year. Hasn't been done in a long time, and it's only been done by a select handful of people, and that's including both the ladies tour and the men's tour.
Yeah, so the cool thing is she had an amazing last putt. I think you saw it live, I saw it in replay, but her face was the best when we saw that. She kind of almost lipped out, and it didn't. It ended up dropping. But man, you could just tell that she was holding her breath when that putt was going in.
2 feet 11 inches is what they had it measured out at, and the statistic for the LPGA Tour for them, the make percentage is extremely high for that distance. Had a little bit of break, but not a ton. She just hit a very poor putt that happened to catch the lip and found its way into the bottom.
The cool thing about her is she shared that this had been a 13-year dream. When she was a teenager, she had a dream of winning the U.S. Open. So it's really cool to see her do that. And now she's only 1 major away from having that career Grand Slam.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah. So another thing in the news is a bunch of amateurs have actually, on the men's side, have basically qualified for the men's U.S. Open that's coming up this weekend, I believe.
Yep.
And one of them was basically caddied by Charlie Woods, Tiger Woods' son. And his name was Miles Russell, and he earned one of the spots by winning the tournament that he played this past weekend to be able to play the U.S. Open. And he was only, I believe, 17 years old? That's crazy. 17 years old.
It's the last of the truly open championships. Yes, they use that term kind of broadly nowadays. They probably shouldn't. But the U.S. Open has qualifiers all over the country that, you start out at one, a regional qualifier, and then you work your way up to a state qualifier, and then a national qualifier, and so on and so forth until you potentially pick one, grab one of the starting spots for the U.S. Open.
Yeah, and it was really cool because Charlie did not have the opportunity to qualify. So instead of just basically putting his tail between his legs and going home, he actually stepped up and decided to be caddy for this individual. And I think that's a great thing. And that's a really cool thing to do as an amateur, to say, hey, let me help you out. So That was really cool. And then lastly, the Internet International golf tournament that had its premiere last year, had a bunch of YouTube influencers play a great round. It was 6 episodes on YouTube. And if I look, I think it was 30 million views. That's crazy. They had 30 million views over 6 episodes on YouTube. Well, they just made the announcement that they're actually upping the ante from $1 million to $4 million. $4 million for an amateur tour stop, basically. That's crazy. And I guess there's going to be 48 individuals that are invited to this tournament. And like we've talked about in the past about influencer golf or YouTube golf, it's all about the personalities, the storylines, the crazy things that happen during the episodes. And that's why it gets 30 million views. But man, $4 million? That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I don't quite understand how they, can do that at the amateur level, because that's what separates the amateurs from the pros is prize money. That's what separates our tour, the US Am Tour, from a regular tour, is that we have to win Visa gift cards rather than winning cash. So,
yeah, and part of it is it's Dave Portnoy's tour. championship that he's doing. He's got money. He knows how to raise money for events like this. He knows what the views mean for his company, Barstool. So I definitely see where the $4 million came from, but I agree with you. I'm kind of curious, like, what does this do to some of the people that are amateurs? Like, can it screw up things for them in the future if they ever decide to get onto a professional tour?
I know the opposite direction. It can mess people up. I know there was a girl at a 4-man scramble tournament that hit a hole-in-one, and they found out that she had participated in a semi-amateur or amateur flighted, I'm sorry, not professional, semi-professional mini tour it was that she participated in, and they didn't want to pay her the prize money. It was a $1 million payout for anybody who hits a hole-in-one, and she happened to capture the hole-in-one, and there was a lot of lawsuits going on. I don't know what the end result of it was, but it had been 4 or 5 years since she had previously played on one of the professional circuits, so she no longer even had her professional tour card of any sort. That, by most people's standards, that would make her an amateur, maybe a really good amateur, but she was still an amateur. The company that sponsored the $1 million payout, most of these tournaments that have something like that, they obviously carry insurance. Well, the insurance carrier that, before they paid it out, they read through all the fine print and found out that it wasn't acceptable for somebody who was had previously been on a pro tour.
And what's interesting too is we had talked about the YGT tour, the Your Golf Tour that some of these YouTube influencers are putting together. They were not invited. And I think some of that, I haven't done the research on it, but my personal opinion is I think some of that is because they're doing this other tour. Barstool and Dave Portnoy and those guys did not want to really invite them to this other thing because they're doing their own thing. So that was kind of interesting to see that some of the guys that are involved in that were not invited. It's going to be interesting to see. I enjoyed it. I was one of the 30 million that viewed it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the drama. I enjoyed the storyline, stuff like that. I think some of it's funny, some of it's stupid, but I enjoy watching it, and I think they do a good job of filming it and stuff like that. But like we've talked about in the past, they do shut down the course. Like it's amazing how many cameras and mics and all of that stuff from a production standpoint. It is insane. But they shut down the entire course. And as we always talk about, that's a choice. They pay the money to do that. They do it so that they don't disrupt other players. And as we always talk about, don't disrupt other players while you're out there and filming and doing stuff that doesn't help the pace of play. And they make sure that they don't have that problem by shutting down the course and making the course their own for this tournament. So that was announced. It's a pretty big deal. I don't know the dates yet. We'll have to share that next episode. So let's talk about this past weekend. We had a US Am Tour. And where was it? Because neither one of us could say it correctly.
Wahconah Golf Club in Massachusetts, just outside of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I think the town was called Williamstown, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be full of baloney on that one. I'm not positive. But I'm pretty sure it was very close to Pittsfield, Mass. Anyway, very beautiful country club, absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, it was a beautiful course. More on the wide open side. But just beautiful. I mean, the course was in great shape. A lot of high to low shots where you got to see the mountains in the background. Beautiful place. But what was so funny is we got there. Beautiful, sunny, looks gorgeous. It's a great day. We tee off. Clouds come in, wind comes in, and it starts raining. And I'll tell you, I am sick and tired of playing golf in the rain, especially tour spots. Like, why? Why is it every time we go somewhere away from home, does it end up raining? Now, I'll be honest, it wasn't horrible. It was just like this annoying spitting that was going on. A couple times it rained a little bit harder, but nothing too crazy. But man, that wind on the first couple holes was tough to play. And I had some shots where I put them up and I just watched them drift away. So how did you shoot?
Shot my best round of the year so far with an 82. Didn't hit particularly well, truthfully. I played very good golf course management. I kept myself until the very last hole. I kept myself from any doubles. Bogeys were my worst hole. I had 11 pars. So I was pretty happy with it overall. Ultimately, I wish my iron approaches were a little bit tighter, so I would have had more birdie opportunities. But most of the pars that I did have came from either up downs where I missed the green entirely, or they came from long two putts where I didn't think I had a legitimate chance at a birdie because my initial putt was 30, 40 foot lag.
So it's funny. Brett hit his first drive off the first hole. I kept my mouth shut this time. I know better now. Don't say anything. And you actually played that hole fairly well, didn't you?
Well, it caught a tree branch and dropped straight underneath, so I had to hit a punch shot, but I punched it right up to the collar, chipped on, and two putted for a bogey, so I wasn't too terribly disappointed given the way that I typically start a golf tournament with a triple or a double. So a single bogey was not so awful.
So you also tied somebody for first overall on the day. The individual that you were tied with was actually a better flight, correct?
Correct. Yeah, he did hit. Open, honest. Depending on what flight you're on this tour, that's going to dictate what tee boxes you hit from. I think overall they hit from about 250 yards longer than me on the day. There wasn't a great deal of distance between my tees and his tees for the most part, but he was actually in my group. Great guy, Dan is. And he hit really solid. You can see why he's a lower handicap golfer than I am, because he's very consistent. He keeps the ball pretty straight almost all day. So he tied me for the low score for the tournament amongst all the fields. So pretty happy overall.
Right. And so because they're in different flights, they don't play a playoff hole. So even though they tied for first overall out of everybody, they don't go into a playoff hole because they're in different flights.
Correct. And the prizes are all separated by flight as well. So I didn't have to beat him. I was still going to take home a trophy, in my group. So it worked out very well for me, and not so bad for somebody else too. How'd you do?
Well, I did okay. I actually won my combined flight, and I am super stoked. Like I laugh because the first thing that came out of Brett's mouth is, "I told you so." And I laugh about that because he has been telling me for the longest time that you are going to win at some point. Just keep playing the way you're playing and you will win. So starting out, I did pretty well. I parred the first hole, and then I birdied the second hole, which was a par 3. And I didn't deserve that birdie, but I'll take it. I hit a kind of low hybrid shot that didn't look great, but it finished great. And I think that's golf. Like, golf is those kinds of shots sometimes. Finished about a flag length away from the back of the hole, and I put it in for a birdie. Not pretty, but I'll take it. So I ended up being 1 under going into hole 3. I couldn't believe that that's how I started. And we always have this joke that if I start out really well, that's probably not a good sign. But I started out really well, kept putting together some really good pars. The other gentleman that was in my group, Adam, was kind of just on my heels. And he and I were going back and forth a little bit on the front 9. And I finished the front 9 with a 43. I thought to myself, hey, that's really good for me. Maybe I got a shot at this. I wasn't really thinking too much about it. And then I laughed because I was in the cart with the director, Don. And Don was like, wow, Brett is having a lights out day. He is shooting really well. And I looked at Don and I went, shush, no more. I don't want to know what anybody else is doing. I don't know what anything's going on in my flight, nothing. I just want to play. And he laughed and he's like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to say anything else. But I could tell throughout the back 9, he wanted to say something because I could tell he was excited that somebody new was going to end up winning this weekend. But Adam didn't let me just have it. Adam was on my tail all those 9 holes. And you said, it was funny because I got done with 18. I shake hands with Adam and he says, congratulations. There's part of me that knew what that meant, but there's part of me that was like, yeah, all right, whatever, thanks. Like, good round. And then I saw you and you fist bumped me and you didn't say a word. And I went and put my stuff in the car. And I laughed what you were saying about why you did that.
The computer hadn't updated yet. We have live scoring on tour, which is fantastic because anybody has the ability to go in and look and see where they are in the standings. Some people that rattles. I am one of those people openly that it rattles. I don't like to know unless I'm on maybe the last hole or two and I'm in it and have a chance. I might occasionally want to peek at it, but even then I tend to stray away from taking any sneak peeks at it. As far as my group. But I do look at other groups, specifically Jake and my wife Erin. I like to look and see how they were doing. Erin struggled a little bit this weekend, not terribly, but a little bit worse than she normally golfs. Saw that Jake was doing really well, but it had only updated through 17 holes. The 18th hole had not come through yet. And I think Jake had a 4-stroke lead through 17, but I didn't want to open my mouth and congratulate him fully because as we don't have a max number that you can get on a hole on our tour, if Jake went out and shot a 12 on the last hole, which it was a par 5 and an uphill one to boot, if he went out and put up a high number and Adam shot par or birdie or something like that, he could have lost or tied and been going to a playoff hole. So I didn't want to give him the full congratulations until that computer updated.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because that hole did not play it well. I played up the wrong fairway, but luckily there was an opening for me to be able to shoot up onto the green and have a ridiculously long putt. But yeah, like I could totally understand where you're like a 4-shot lead. It's a good lead, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to walk off with the win because it's very easy to have a bad shot or 2 bad shots or a bad putt or 2 bad putts. And now you're sitting at like 3 or 4 over the hole, and Adam could have very easily come back and won. But it was just funny because he congratulated me on the green, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. It wasn't until Don handed me this that I kind of was like, oh, I actually won. Like, it just didn't sink in until I actually had this in my hand. But like I said, I felt good going into the back 9. Now, at this course, beautiful course, pretty much wide open on the front 9, some really big, nice greens on the front 9, a little bit easier to play, but that back 9 was challenging.
Yeah, I thought the slope on the greens on both the front and back was pretty tough. Again, if you were above the pin, you were in trouble. Even some of the side slopes on them were really tough. So you wanted to be on one side versus the other of the green a lot of times as well. So that part played, I thought, pretty consistent from hole 1 through 18. But as far as the fairways were concerned and some of the other dangers, way narrower on the back 9 than the front.
Yeah. I will say, I shot a 90. Really wish I had broken 90, but I'll take it. I still got the win, so I'm happy about that. But I definitely felt like you were saying, that I left some shots on the course. I definitely let some of the putts get away from me, and I didn't have as good of a putting experience as I've had in the last couple tour stops. But I also had some approaches that I wish had been a little bit tighter, like you said, to the green to give you that, not necessarily for me a birdie opportunity, but that par opportunity for me. So I definitely feel like I left some shots there. The course is absolutely beautiful, and I enjoyed playing there. I will tell you, there's a par 3 on the back 9 that has a sand trap that'll make you think. You do not want to be short on that hole. So how did you play that hole?
I actually played that hole pretty well. I pulled it a little bit, but I got green in regulation on that one. So I, had a 2-putt, and it was a little bit wider than where I wanted to be, but I was still able to get my 2-putt for a par. So I was pretty happy with that hole.
I overshot it. And I overshot it again because I had done the same thing the hole before with my hybrid. And I turned to Adam and I said, I swear I never hit it that far. And then I hit it again and I hit it that far. And I looked at Adam and Adam's like, you clearly can hit it that far. But I will tell you that my thought process on that with this giant sand bunker that was super deep on the front is long's better than short. I'd much rather be over the back and chipping into the green than stuck in that freaking sand trap.
Yeah.
That sand trap was brutal. It's definitely brutal. So what was your favorite thing about this course?
I liked the layout a lot. It had some interesting holes. There was a little ribbon-like creek. It wasn't super long. It ran through, I'm going to guess, 3 or 4 holes throughout the course of the day. So it didn't come into play greatly, but it was kind of scenic the way it meandered through those 3 or 4 holes. I loved the elevation change on the course. I'm not a big fan of hitting off a lot of multiple side slopes, but up and down, those I'm usually pretty good at. And I liked the fact that this course had a lot of that because, again, as Jake previously mentioned, you got some really scenic views on some of the tee boxes when you're hitting downhill. You'd see I believe it's the Berkshire Mountains we were staring at that were off to our east. And it was just really pretty golf course as a whole. I loved the fact that the fairways, again, like I mentioned of fairways and Half Moon golf course we did, how you could take a nice healthy divot, your club could still pull through and it wouldn't hurt your distance terribly. The rough was fairly consistent from one spot to the next, I found. I'm a huge fan of consistency on golf courses from top to bottom. I want my green speeds to be fairly close to the same on T1 or green 1 and green 18. And I would like the same thing no matter where you go in the rough. You'd like it to be fairly close. I know no course, outside of maybe Augusta National, no course is going to get it perfect, but they did an awful good job there of keeping things pretty even across the board on all their, danger situations.
And so we got the opportunity to play this course, even though it was semi-private, I believe.
Yeah, it's a semi-private.
It was semi-private. And we want to express a thank you to Tom, I believe.
Yeah, Tom Hazen.
Tom, thank you for getting us on that course. It was an awesome experience. It was great because it was a new course for pretty much everybody except for Tom, because it was Tom's home course. So I really appreciate the fact that you worked that out. We had to unfortunately cancel a different USAM Tour stop that we were going to have, and this one kind of popped up, and I was like, I want to be there. And so I came home from a business trip early to make sure that I was there, and it was a great experience because, again, I won. So I'm happy about that. I will say, though, it's been really interesting having won a tour stop and then going back to Brookhaven and playing there.
Yeah.
Brookhaven, we have realized that Brookhaven is a tough course, and it is fun to play, but man, it is punishing at times. I walked away from this course that we just did with the USAM Tour feeling really good about myself. And then Tuesday, we went back to Brookhaven, and I got slapped again with humility when it comes to golf.
It's a great thing about golf. You can't be too boisterous about your good rounds, and you shouldn't get too low about your bad rounds because it is a roller coaster ride from one end of the spectrum to the other. I've had the same thing. I've shot great tour rounds and gone over there and shot like garbage. I've never seen so many rounds for me in the mid-90s. I'm a mid-handicap golfer, so that should put me high 80s, low 90s on a bad day. And I've had an awful lot in the mid-90s this year. So the course definitely plays tough, but we're learning a lot too.
Yeah. And I will say that, like, I felt like some of my shot selection or my club selection was a lot better on this tour stop than it had been in the past, because I felt like, okay, I can make some different decisions. I will share something that was kind of funny. I had a couple shots that were like under trees or in areas that were kind of tough that I had to punch out. And I said to Don, the director, after I made the shot and I hit a decent shot, I said, that's because of Brookhaven. Because Brookhaven, I constantly have to do those shots. I've gotten really good at punch outs. I'm not sure that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a good thing to have in my bag, I guess.
Any tool you can add to your golf bag, any swing style you can add to it helps. It's going to help you both casually golfing with your buddies, and it's also going to help you in a tour situation, because it's one more thing you can go to and say, okay, I know how to do that. I've done it before and I can do it again.
All right, well, before we move on to our next segment, I want to say thank you to the Luxury Box, which is where we are recording this. This is actually an indoor area that you can hit from, and it's in Queensbury, New York, just outside of Lake George. And again, it's theluxurybox.net. If you're interested in it's a rainy day during the summer, or you're just trying to fix a swing, or you're working on stuff, this is a great place to do it. And actually, we did that the day before we went on that tour spot.
We came here late at night.
Yeah, so I hadn't swung since Monday, And I was like, I really want to go into Sunday not having swung a club. And so we came here for a couple hours, hit a couple drivers on the driving range, hit a couple clubs on the driving range, and then we played around, and I think it helped us.
I think it helped a lot. I mean, I hadn't hit all week either with him being with you being out of town, Jake. I ended up staying at home, getting some paperwork done, getting some, landscaping done on my own. And I was feeling at the very least a little rusty when we came in here to golf the luxury box. But, it doesn't take long to shake off the rust once you get some swings in and you get to see how you're performing. But felt awesome to get that in the night before and be able to do it here at the luxury box.
Yeah. And so thank you, Dave, at the Luxury Box for allowing us to record here. And again, that is theluxurybox.net. Be sure to check them out. So now we are going to go into our segment, Rule of the Day. The rule of the day is talking about if you're in a bunker, and say you're in the bunker and you're jammed up against the lip, and you're like, if I hit this, it's not going anywhere good. You have a couple choices. And I'm actually surprised by some of these choices because I didn't think you really had an option other than to try to swing at it. But I can understand that sometimes it's unplayable. And so one of the options you have is stroke and distance. So basically you just go back to where you hit from and you take that penalty shot and you hit again. The one that really surprised me that we were talking about before we recorded is that you can have lateral relief, which means you can actually back away from that side that you're jammed up against and be still in the sand and take a sand shot, but you still take a stroke penalty. You can also, that's the back on the line. That was the back on the line. You could do the lateral as well, which in that situation will be tough because you have to figure out where that lateral is compared to where you are. But back of the line is the one where you can kind of like back away from that lip. But again, you're taking a stroke penalty. And then if you're just like, I don't want to play out of the sand, I don't want to deal with the sand trap, you can take a 2-shot penalty and basically back out away from the sand trap. So I thought that was really interesting because I never knew that. I never knew you had those options if you felt that it was unplayable. Did you?
I did not know that there was anything, truthfully, that you could label something. I suppose the plugged ball makes sense if you're up underneath the lip of a bunker. I never knew that there was a rule accommodating you, allowing you to move it and keep it in the bunker and only take a 1-stroke penalty versus, your typical 2-stroke penalty.
Yeah, like I was really surprised by that, but I can see where, like you said, if it's plugged up against that, it's going to end up going backwards anyway in most shots if you try to do that, or you're going to end up breaking your wrist trying to hit it out of that plugged spot. So You don't want to end up doing that. So another thing we want to address is we actually had a comment on one of our YouTube shorts that I want to share and want to talk about because it was a really interesting question, but it had to do with scrambles. So Brett had talked about the rule of a provisional ball and how you play that. And if you play your provisional ball and then all of a sudden you find your other one maybe a couple of feet forward, you can't play that because you already played your provisional ball. So Cloud_surfer asked, slightly off topic, but similar. In a scramble, if the first shot is chosen and everyone hits the second shot, and as a group moves up the fairway and then finds one of the golfer's original shots, are you able to pick up the 4 shots and hit from the further shot and replay the second shot? Now, I'll be honest with you, no. That's the short answer is no, because you already committed to that shot. And I know we were talking about before we started when we were reviewing this, that it's very much like a provisional shot.
It is.
And I think even though you're in a scramble, it's important to follow those rules and play the way you should play. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be different rules for different scrambles and things like that. I just think that you need to realize that once you commit to that second shot or third shot or whatever, if you find something up further, just pick it up and move on.
It's just like a provisional in regular golf, Jake. When you're just playing stroke play, once you play your original provisional, hoping to find your first drive, but you played that provisional. If you couldn't find your first drive right away, and then you decide to play the provisional, as soon as you make contact with that provisional ball, that now becomes your active ball. No amount of whining, crying, or moaning or groaning is going to make that change. That is the rule. There are some quirky things about amateur golf. There are some quirky things about scrambles in particular, but for the most part, they follow USGA rules. Obviously, there are some stuff because it's a scramble, because they want to increase pace of play and so on and so forth. You can do things like hit with anywhere within a 1 club length distance from the ball that you guys have chosen to hit as a group. That obviously you wouldn't be able to do during regular stroke play, but you're also, again, depending on the tournament and how particular they are about being rules, you're supposed to keep it in the same surface, meaning if you were in the sand, you're all supposed to be in the sand on your next shot, not drop it back a club length from there, and that puts you in the fairway or in the rough. Same thing with rough to fairway. If the ball you've chosen to hit is in the rough, if 1 club length puts you on the fairway, you're not supposed to change to that. There's obviously a rough shot is much harder to hit than a fairway shot. That's obviously going to be more difficult for everybody, and they want to make the game challenging but fair. The fair part is people shouldn't have to hit out of a divot, so you're not going to mark the ball you've chosen as a group to hit, and then have one guy hit, and then the next 3 guys have to hit out of that same divot. That just, that's beyond fair. So,
Well, and I think what we'll cover later is you were looking up like some crazy scramble rules that are out there for different types of scrambles. So we'll have to cover that in a next episode or one of the upcoming episodes, because I'm really curious to hear, like, I thought a scramble was a scramble, and you're telling me there's other ones out there.
There's a lot of different names for some of the same scrambles, and there's a lot of different forms of scramble.
And there's also other like ways to play when you play with your friends. And we've talked about, there's the wolf one that we need to cover at some point. We haven't played that yet, but we need to do that. But there's all these other games that you can do that isn't just stroke play, that it can be fun when you're playing with your friends. So we'll cover some of that stuff in the future episodes. So coming up, we've got Thunderheart in June. On June 20th, the US Am Tour, we've got Thunderheart. That should be fun. We love that course. We've been there a couple times. Hopefully it doesn't rain, because we're sick of playing in the rain there. What else do we have coming up?
Oh, geez. Well, Jake and I and Aaron, we're going to be making our way out to the Travelers Tournament, PGA Tournament, the week after Thunderheart. If I'm not mistaken, that was the dates. We're going out there to Connecticut, and we're going to watch the Championship Day, Sunday. It's a beautiful facility from what I've been told. There's a lot of great viewing areas where you can watch multiple holes at once. We'll probably travel around and see, a bunch of different areas on the course rather than just plop ourselves in one spot and stay there. Just on a little side note, Jake, I did want to mention, as far as the US Am Tour goes, I wanted to make note of the fact that Jake is a high handicap golfer. He doesn't shy away from that. He's working to become a mid-handicap golfer, but you can see what he came home with this weekend, as well as a pocket full of cash from some of the side bets we did, like birdies skins and poleys and stuff like that. Jake won the only poley on the day. I think he forgot to mention that, so he came home with a wad of cash for that. But also, I just want to point out the fact that we've had, I believe, 4 tour stops now on the year. I might be forgetting one, but I don't think so. I think it's 4. And I think we are already up to over a dozen winners amongst the different categories. So it's not, you don't have to be a super low handicap. Like I said, everything's flighted. You don't have to hit it super close to your handicap number every time you play, because, I've already won a round this year at Norman's side where I was well above my handicap as far as the number I shot, but I played well enough to win by 1 stroke. So I just wanted to point out that everybody out there has an opportunity. And I've said that about after Aaron had won 2 in a row, that, women shouldn't be be afraid to join the tour, young women, old women, and in between, because the opportunity is there for everybody to win. Same thing for high handicap golfers or mid handicap hacks like myself. We all have a chance to win because of this flighted tour that we're on. The US Am Tour provides something that I don't think any other tour can also, particularly because Don Frame runs ours so well. It's that family feeling, that camaraderie you get amongst the golfers you're golfing.
Well, and I think it was funny. We were on the way home because we had our carpooled, and we carpooled with Jeff, which, if you heard the story about Jeff last episode and how positive he is about everything, go check that out. Jeff's awesome. So Jeff won last year. I won this weekend. You and Aaron have won. And I love the fact that at one point you're like, hey, we're a van full of winners. We've all won at least one tour stop. So that was kind of cool to like hear you say that. And I forgot about the fact that Jeff had won last year. So yeah, we are all winners that were in that van. So that was really, really cool. Or sorry, the XL golf cart, which is what he calls it.
That's what we call the minivan.
And so it was really cool to like have that experience and just feel that, especially since I have been frustrated trying to get low scores. And you have just kept hammering me. Give it time. It'll happen. It'll happen. So yeah, if you're a high handicap or you're somebody that's nervous about joining a tour stop or a tour like this, don't be. It's so much fun. We've gotten to know guys from all over the state and all over like the Northeast, basically.
Yeah.
We had guys that were, because we were in Massachusetts, we had a guy from Connecticut.
We had a guy from Virginia come up as well.
Yeah. So it's like we have guys coming from all over the place. It is so much fun. So if you're interested, please reach out to Don and go to usamtour.com and look up the Albany region, and you'll be able to reach out to Don. Don always wants to talk to guys that are, or people, because guys or girls that are interested in joining the tour. And like I said, we'll be at Thunderheart in a week and a half. And then I can't wait to go to that PGA event. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to sign off. We'll talk to you guys later. And remember,
never leave a birdie putt short.